The rain drummed against the coffee shop window as Michael Ruiz stared at his phone, reading the same message for the 10th time in 5 minutes. Can we talk? I've been thinking about what you said about signs. His heart hammered against his ribs as he glanced up to see Aaron Jones pushing through the door, water droplets clinging to his dark hair. Those familiar green eyes scanning the room until they found him. Aaron had always been beautiful in that effortless way that made Michael's chest tight with longing. But today there was something different about him. Something vulnerable in the way he moved, the way his shoulders seemed to carry an invisible weight. When their eyes met across the crowded cafe, Michael felt that familiar electricity shoot through him, the same spark that had been there since college, the same one he'd spent 3 years pretending didn't exist. Hey, Aaron said, sliding into the booth across from him, his voice softer than usual. His fingers drummed nervously against the table, and Michael noticed the way Aaron's wedding ring was absent from his left hand. The pale band of skin where it used to rest looked like a small, telling scar. Hey yourself, Michael replied, trying to keep his voice steady even as his world tilted on its axis. This was it. This was the conversation he had been both dreading and hoping for since Aaron had called him 2 weeks ago. Voice thick with tears, saying his marriage was over and asking if Michael remembered what he'd said about not believing in signs. But to understand how they'd arrived at this moment, how two best friends who'd spent years dancing around each other had finally ended up here, you had to go back to the beginning. Back to when Michael had first realized he was in love with his straight best friend, and when Aaron had first started questioning everything he thought he knew about himself. Before we see how this ends, tell us where you are watching from and hype this video in the comments. 3 months earlier, Michael had been sitting in his apartment, grading papers and trying not to think about the fact that Aaron was probably having dinner with his wife Christine at that very moment. It had become a ritual of sorts, this careful choreography of avoidance and longing that defined his evenings. He'd learned to time his grocery runs to avoid the hours when Aaron might call, learned to keep himself busy enough that he wouldn't spend entire nights wondering what it would be like to be the one Aaron came home to. The knock on his door at 9:30 that night had surprised him. Aaron stood in the hallway, still in his work clothes but rumpled, like he'd been running his hands through his hair. His eyes were red-rimmed, and there was something broken in his expression that made Michael's protective instincts flare to life. "Can I come in?" Aaron asked, and Michael stepped aside without hesitation, the way he always did when Aaron needed him. They'd settled on Michael's couch, the same worn leather sofa where they'd spent countless nights during college, watching movies and talking about everything and nothing. But tonight felt different. Tonight Aaron sat with space between them, his hands clasped tightly in his lap, and Michael could feel the tension radiating from him like heat from a fever. "Christine and I had another fight," Aaron said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "About kids, about the future, about whether we even want the same things anymore." He looked up at Michael then, and the pain in his eyes was so raw that Michael had to resist the urge to reach for him. Michael had heard this story before, in various iterations over the past 2 years. Aaron and Christine's marriage had been struggling for a while, though Aaron rarely talked about it directly. Instead, it came out in small comments, in the way Aaron's smile never quite reached his eyes anymore, in how he'd started working later and later, finding excuses to avoid going home. "What did you fight about this time?" Michael asked gently, settling back against the couch cushions and trying to project the calm, supportive energy that Aaron needed from him. It was a role he'd perfected over the years, being the friend Aaron could count on, the one who listened without judgment. Aaron was quiet for a long moment, staring down at his hands. When he spoke, his voice was so soft, Michael had to lean forward to hear him. "She said I don't love her the way I should, that I'm holding something back, like I'm waiting for something else." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "The thing is, I think she might be right." Michael's heart clenched, but he kept his expression neutral. "What do you mean?" "I don't know," Aaron said, running a hand through his hair in that gesture Michael knew meant he was frustrated. "I love Christine. I do. She's beautiful and smart and funny, and on paper we're perfect together. But lately I feel like I'm playing a part, like I'm this husband character, saying the right lines, going through the motions, but it doesn't feel real." The words hung between them like a bridge neither was ready to cross. Michael had heard Aaron express doubts about his marriage before, but never with this level of raw honesty, never with this sense of something fundamental being wrong. "Have you talked to her about how you're feeling?" Michael asked, though part of him dreaded the answer. Part of him that had been in love with Aaron for 3 years and counting hoped desperately that this marriage would end, while the better part of him, the part that truly cared about Aaron's happiness, wanted his friend to find whatever he was looking for. "How can I?" Aaron's voice cracked slightly. "How do I tell my wife that I feel like I'm living someone else's life? That every time she talks about our future together, about the house we're going to buy and the kids we're going to have, I feel like I'm suffocating?" Michael shifted on the couch, unconsciously moving closer to Aaron. "Maybe you need to take some time to figure out what you actually want. Not what you think you should want, but what would make you happy." Aaron looked at him then, really looked at him, and Michael felt that familiar electricity pass between them. It was the same look Aaron had given him sometimes in college, when they'd stayed up too late talking about life and dreams and fears. The look that made Michael wonder if maybe, just maybe, there was something there that Aaron hadn't acknowledged yet. "What if I don't know what that is?" Aaron asked, and his voice was so vulnerable that Michael's chest ached with the need to comfort him. "Then you figure it out," Michael said simply. "You take the time you need and you be honest with yourself about what you're feeling." Aaron nodded slowly, but Michael could see the fear in his eyes. Fear of change, fear of hurting Christine, fear of discovering truths about himself that he wasn't ready to face. They sat in comfortable silence for a while after that, the kind of easy quiet that had always existed between them. Michael wanted to say more, wanted to tell Aaron that whatever he was going through, he didn't have to face it alone. But he also knew that Aaron needed to come to his own realizations in his own time. When Aaron finally left that night, he paused at the door, his hand on the frame. "Michael," he said, not turning around, "thank you for always being here, for listening without trying to fix everything." "Always," Michael replied, and he meant it with every fiber of his being. The weeks that followed were a careful dance of increased closeness and maintained boundaries. Aaron started coming over more often, sometimes with the excuse of needing to talk, sometimes just to exist in the same space as Michael. They'd order takeout and watch movies, or sit on Michael's balcony with beer and talk about work, about books, about everything except the growing tension between them. Michael found himself cataloging these moments like precious artifacts. The way Aaron laughed at his terrible jokes, the way Aaron's eyes would linger on his face when he thought Michael wasn't looking, the way Aaron had started sitting closer to him on the couch, their thighs touching, neither of them moving away. It was during one of these evenings, about 6 weeks after that first conversation, that Aaron asked the question that changed everything. They were sitting on the couch, having just finished watching some mindless action movie, when Aaron turned to him with an expression Michael couldn't quite read. "Michael," Aaron said, his voice careful and measured, "can I ask you something? And will you promise to give me an honest answer?" Michael's pulse quickened, but he nodded. "Of course." Aaron was quiet for a moment, seeming to gather his courage. When he spoke, his words came out in a rush. "Do you think it's possible to be attracted to someone and not realize it? Like to have feelings for someone that you've convinced yourself are just friendship?" The question hit Michael like a physical blow. He stared at Aaron, trying to read his expression, trying to understand what exactly he was being asked. "I think," he said carefully, "that sometimes we tell ourselves stories about what we're feeling because the truth is too complicated or scary to face." Aaron nodded slowly, his eyes fixed on Michael's face. "What if the person you're attracted to is someone you never thought you could be attracted to? Someone who doesn't fit the pattern of who you've always been drawn to?" Michael's mouth went dry. "I think attraction doesn't always follow the rules we set for ourselves. Sometimes it just is." "Have you ever felt that way?" Aaron asked, and there was something in his voice that made Michael's heart race. "Attracted to someone you didn't expect to be attracted to?" The moment stretched between them, heavy with possibility and danger. Michael could feel Aaron's eyes on him, waiting for an answer, and he knew that whatever he said next could change everything between them. "Yes," Michael said quietly, "I have." Aaron's breath caught slightly. "What did you do about it?" I tried to ignore it, Michael admitted. I told myself it was just confusion or loneliness or wishful thinking. I convinced myself that what I was feeling wasn't real. Did that work? Michael met Aaron's eyes directly. No, it didn't. The silence that followed was charged with electricity. Aaron's hand was resting on the couch between them, and Michael could see the slight tremor in his fingers. When Aaron spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. I think I might be attracted to you. The words hung in the air like a confession and a question all at once. Michael felt his world shift, realigning itself around this new reality. 3 years of careful friendship, 3 years of buried feelings, 3 years of wondering and hoping and telling himself it would never happen. And now here they were. Aaron, Michael said, his voice rough with emotion. I know, Aaron said quickly, as if he could take the words back if he spoke fast enough. I know this is crazy. I know I'm married. I know I've never been with a man. I know this complicates everything. But I can't stop thinking about it. About you, about what it would be like to... He trailed off, but Michael could see the want in his eyes, could see the fear and confusion and desperate honesty. What it would be like to what? Michael asked gently. Aaron's cheeks flushed, but he didn't look away. To kiss you, to touch you, to stop pretending that what I feel for you is just friendship. Michael's heart was racing so fast he was surprised Aaron couldn't hear it. This was everything he'd wanted and everything he'd been terrified of. Aaron, beautiful and confused, and finally seeing what had been between them all along. Aaron, Michael said again, and this time Aaron's name sounded like a prayer. Tell me I'm not crazy, Aaron whispered. Tell me you feel it too. Michael reached out then, slowly, giving Aaron time to pull away if he wanted to. When Aaron didn't move, Michael's fingers found his hand, intertwining their fingers with a gentleness that spoke of years of wanting. You're not crazy, Michael said. I've been in love with you for 3 years. Aaron's eyes widened, and Michael could see the shock and relief and something that might have been joy flicker across his face. 3 years? Since that night junior year when you fell asleep on my couch after studying for finals, Michael said. I woke up and you were there, and I realized that I wanted to wake up to you every morning for the rest of my life. Why didn't you say anything? Michael squeezed Aaron's hand gently. Because you were straight. Because you were my best friend. Because I was terrified of losing you. Aaron was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. When he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. I don't think I'm as straight as I thought I was. That's okay, Michael said. You don't have to figure it all out right now. You don't have to put a label on it or know what it means for your future. You just have to know what you're feeling in this moment. What I'm feeling, Aaron said, his thumb tracing patterns on the back of Michael's hand, is that I want to kiss you so badly it's making me dizzy. Michael's breath caught. What about Christine? The mention of Aaron's wife seemed to bring him back to reality slightly. His expression grew pained, and Michael could see the guilt and confusion warring with the desire in his eyes. I don't know, Aaron said honestly. I don't know what this means for my marriage. I don't know what this means for anything. All I know is that I've been miserable for months, feeling like something was missing, feeling like I was living a lie, and sitting here with you right now is the first time I've felt like myself in I don't know how long. Michael understood. He could see the conflict in Aaron's face, could see how torn he was between the life he'd built and the feelings he was just beginning to understand. But he could also see the truth in Aaron's eyes, the recognition of something that had been there all along, waiting to be acknowledged. What do you want to do? Michael asked softly. Aaron looked at him for a long moment, his eyes searching Michael's face as if memorizing every detail. Then slowly he leaned forward, closing the distance between them until their faces were inches apart. I want to see what this feels like, Aaron whispered, his breath warm against Michael's lips. Michael's heart was pounding so hard he was sure Aaron could feel it. Are you sure? Instead of answering with words, Aaron closed the final distance between them, pressing his lips to Michael's in a kiss that was soft and tentative and absolutely perfect. Michael felt his eyes flutter close as Aaron's hand came up to cup his cheek, thumb brushing across his skin with a tenderness that made his chest ache. The kiss deepened slowly, Aaron's initial hesitation melting away as he seemed to realize that this, whatever this was, felt right. Michael had imagined this moment countless times over the past 3 years, but nothing had prepared him for the reality of Aaron's lips against his, for the way Aaron's fingers tangled in his hair, for the soft sound Aaron made when Michael's hand found his waist. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. Aaron rested his forehead against Michael's, his eyes still closed, his hand still cupping Michael's face. "Wow," Aaron whispered. "Yeah," Michael agreed, his voice rough. "Wow." They stayed like that for a moment, foreheads touching, breathing the same air, both of them trying to process what had just happened. When Aaron finally opened his eyes, Michael could see wonder and fear and something that looked like relief. "That felt," Aaron started, then trailed off, shaking his head. "What?" "Right," Aaron said simply. "It felt right." Michael's heart soared at the words, but he could also see the panic starting to creep into Aaron's expression as the reality of what they'd done began to sink in. "Aaron," Michael said gently, "we don't have to figure this all out tonight. We don't have to make any decisions or commitments. We just have to be honest about what we're feeling." "I'm feeling terrified," Aaron admitted, his hand still resting against Michael's cheek. "I'm feeling like my entire understanding of myself just shifted, and I don't know what that means." "That's okay," Michael said. "Being scared is okay. This is big. This changes things." "What if I'm not brave enough for this?" Aaron asked, his voice small. "What if I can't handle what this means about me, about my life?" Michael caught Aaron's hand in both of his, bringing it to his lips to press a soft kiss to his palm. "Then we take it one day at a time, one moment at a time. There's no rush, no pressure. We figure it out together." Aaron's eyes searched his face. "Together? If that's what you want." "I don't know what I want," Aaron said, but his thumb was tracing patterns on Michael's wrist, and he wasn't pulling away. "I know I want to understand what this is. I know I want to understand what I'm feeling." Then that's where we start. They talked until nearly 3 in the morning, sitting on that couch with their hands intertwined, both of them afraid to move too far apart, afraid that the spell would break if they let go of each other. Aaron talked about his marriage, about the growing sense of disconnection he'd been feeling, about how he'd started to wonder if he'd gotten married because it was what he was supposed to do rather than what he actually wanted. Michael listened, offering comfort and understanding without judgment, the way he always had. But now there was something different between them, an acknowledgement of feelings that had been simmering under the surface for years. When Aaron finally left that night, he paused at the door again, but this time he turned around. "Michael," he said, his eyes serious, "I need some time to think about this, about what it means, about what I want to do." "I know," Michael said. "Take all the time you need. Will you wait for me while I figure this out?" The question was so vulnerable, so hopeful, that Michael felt his chest tighten with emotion. "I've been waiting for 3 years," he said softly. "I can wait a little longer." Aaron's smile was small but genuine. "Thank you." The next 2 weeks were a special kind of torture. Aaron didn't call, didn't text, didn't come by the apartment. Michael threw himself into work, grading papers and preparing lesson plans with an intensity that his colleagues noticed but didn't comment on. He tried not to think about what Aaron might be deciding, tried not to imagine scenarios where Aaron chose his marriage, chose the safe and familiar path over the uncertain territory they'd stumbled into together. But he also tried not to hope too much, tried not to let himself believe that Aaron would choose him. Because the truth was, Michael understood the magnitude of what he was asking. Aaron would have to leave his wife, would have to come out, would have to rebuild his entire understanding of himself and his future. That was a lot to ask of anyone, even someone you loved. So when Aaron finally called, his voice thick with tears and exhaustion, saying that Christine had asked him to move out, Michael's first instinct was to comfort rather than celebrate. "What happened?" Michael asked, already reaching for his keys. "She said she couldn't do it anymore," Aaron said, his voice breaking. "She said she could see that I wasn't happy, that I was somewhere else even when I was with her. She said she deserved better than someone who was just going through the motions." Where are you? Hotel downtown, the Marriott on 5th. I'm coming over. Michael found Aaron sitting on the edge of the hotel bed, still in his work clothes, looking lost and broken and younger than his 28 years. The room was sterile and impersonal, nothing like the warm, lived-in space they'd shared so many evenings in. Hey, Michael said softly, sitting down beside him. Hey, Aaron replied, and when he looked up, his eyes were red-rimmed and exhausted. She was right, about everything. I wasn't being fair to her. You were trying to figure things out. I was being a coward, Aaron said. I should have been honest with her months ago. I should have been honest with myself. Michael reached for Aaron's hand, the gesture as natural as breathing now. You're being honest now, that's what matters. Aaron's fingers intertwined with his, and Michael could feel some of the tension leave Aaron's shoulders. I told her, Aaron said quietly, about you, about what I'm feeling. Michael's heart stopped. You did? She asked me directly if there was someone else, and I couldn't lie to her anymore. I told her that I thought I might be in love with my best friend. How did she take it? Aaron was quiet for a moment. Better than I expected, actually. She said she'd suspected something for a while. She said the way I talked about you, the way I lit up when you called, it was obvious that you meant more to me than just a friend. I'm sorry, Michael said, and he meant it. He was sorry for Christine's pain, sorry for the mess of it all, sorry that love was so complicated and messy and capable of hurting people, even when it was real and true. Don't be sorry, Aaron said, squeezing his hand. Be here with me. Help me figure out what comes next. They spent the night talking, curled up together on the hotel bed, Aaron's head on Michael's shoulder, their hands never quite letting go of each other. Aaron talked about his fears, about what it meant to realize at 28 that he might not be who he thought he was. Michael talked about the years of loving Aaron from a distance, about the careful balance of hope and resignation he'd maintained. As the sun started to rise, painting the hotel room in soft golden light, Aaron turned to face Michael, their faces inches apart on the shared pillow. I'm scared, Aaron whispered. I know, Michael whispered back. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be with a man. I don't know how to come out to my family, my friends, my coworkers. I don't know how to rebuild my entire life. You don't have to do it all at once, Michael said gently. You just have to take the next step, and then the one after that. What's the next step? Michael's heart was racing, but he tried to keep his voice steady. The next step is deciding what you want, not what you think you should want, not what would be easier or safer, but what would make you happy. Aaron's eyes searched his face, and Michael could see the moment when Aaron made his decision. It was there in the way his expression shifted from fear to determination, in the way his hand tightened around Michael's. I want you, Aaron said, his voice clear and certain. I want this. I want to figure out what it means to be with you, to love you the way I think I've been wanting to love you for longer than I realized. Michael felt tears prick at his eyes. Are you sure? I'm terrified, Aaron said honestly, but I'm sure. I've spent the last 2 weeks thinking about that kiss, about how it felt to finally stop pretending, and I can't go back to the way things were. I can't go back to living a lie. It's not going to be easy, Michael warned. There are going to be people who don't understand, people who judge us. There are going to be moments when you wonder if you made the right choice. I know, Aaron said, but I also know that the only thing scarier than facing all of that is the thought of losing you. The thought of spending the rest of my life wondering what could have been. Miguel leaned forward then, closing the distance between them, and kissed Aaron with all the love and hope and desperate relief he'd been carrying for 3 years. Aaron kissed him back and with equal intensity, his hands tangling in Michael's hair, his body pressing closer as if he could merge them into one person. When they broke apart, both of them were breathing hard, and Aaron's eyes were bright with unshed tears. I love you, Aaron whispered, the words falling between them like a benediction. I love you, and I'm sorry it took me so long to realize it. I love you too, Michael replied, his voice thick with emotion. I love you, and I'll wait as long as you need me to wait while you figure this out. I don't want to wait anymore, Aaron said. I've wasted enough time already. They made love that morning as the sun streamed through the hotel windows, slow and tender, and full of years of pent-up longing. Aaron was nervous at first, his hands shaking slightly as he explored Michael's body, but Michael was patient and gentle, guiding him through the unfamiliar territory of loving another man. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the hotel's sheets, Aaron's head on Michael's chest, both of them quiet and content in a way that felt like coming home. "What happens now?" Aaron asked softly. "Now we take it one day at a time," Michael said, his fingers combing through Aaron's hair. "Now we figure out how to be together. Now we build something real." "I want to tell people," Aaron said, lifting his head to look at Michael. "I want to tell my friends, my family. I want to stop hiding." Michael's heart swelled with pride and love. "Are you ready for that?" "I'm ready to try," Aaron said. "I'm ready to stop being ashamed of loving you." Over the next few weeks, they navigated the complicated process of Aaron coming out and their relationship becoming public. There were difficult conversations with family members, awkward moments with friends who struggled to understand, and a few relationships that didn't survive the revelation. But there were also moments of beautiful acceptance. Friends who said they'd always suspected and were just happy to see Aaron finally being honest about who he was. Michael's family welcomed Aaron with open arms, treating him like the son-in-law they'd been hoping Michael would bring home someday. Aaron's parents took longer to come around, but eventually they began to see how happy their son was, how much lighter and more authentic he seemed with Michael by his side. The divorce proceedings were amicable, Christine gracious in a way that spoke to her character and her genuine desire for Aaron to find happiness, even if it wasn't with her. She and Aaron had a final conversation where she told him she was proud of him for being brave enough to live his truth and that she hoped he and Michael would be very happy together. 3 months after that first kiss on Michael's couch, they were sitting in the same coffee shop where our story began, Aaron's wedding ring long gone, replaced by a simple silver band that Michael had given him as a promise of their future together. "I've been thinking about what you said," Aaron said, his fingers intertwined with Michael's across the small table. "About signs. What about them? You said you didn't believe in them, that things just happen, that we make our own meaning." Michael nodded, remembering the conversation from months ago, back when Aaron was still married and they were both pretending that what was between them was just friendship. "But what if you were wrong?" Aaron continued, his eyes bright with something that looked like wonder. "What if us reconnecting, us finally being honest about our feelings? What if that was a sign? What if the universe was trying to tell us something?" Michael considered this, looking at Aaron's hopeful face, thinking about the series of events that had led them here. Christine asking for space, Aaron showing up at his door that night, the conversation that had finally opened the door they'd both been afraid to walk through. "What kind of sign do you think it was?" Michael asked. "That some things are meant to be," Aaron said simply. "That some people are meant to find each other, even if it takes them a while to figure it out." Michael squeezed Aaron's hand, feeling the warmth of the silver ring against his palm. "You know what I think?" "What?" "I think maybe signs aren't about the universe sending us messages," Michael said. "Maybe signs are about us finally being ready to see what was always there." Aaron's smile was radiant. "So you do believe in signs now?" "I believe in us," Michael said. "I believe in the fact that we found each other, that we were brave enough to take the risk, that we didn't let fear keep us from something beautiful." "Is that a yes?" Michael laughed, bringing Aaron's hand to his lips to press a soft kiss to his knuckles. "If believing in signs means believing that you and I were always meant to end up here in this coffee shop, holding hands and planning our future together, then yes, I believe in signs." "Good," Aaron said, his eyes sparkling with mischief, "because I have another question for you." "What's that?" Aaron reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, setting it on the table between them. Michael's heart stopped, his eyes widening as he looked from the box to Aaron's nervous, hopeful face. "Aaron," Michael whispered. "I know it's only been 3 months since I came out," Aaron said, his voice shaking slightly. "I know we're still figuring things out, still learning how to be together. But I also know that I've spent 3 years of my life living a lie, and I don't want to waste another day pretending that what I feel for you is anything less than forever." Michael stared at the box, his heart racing, tears pricking at his eyes. Around them, the coffee shop continued its normal rhythm. people chatting and laughing and going about their daily lives, oblivious to the fact that Michael's world was about to change completely. I love you, Aaron continued, his voice growing stronger. I love your patience and your kindness and the way you waited for me to figure out who I was. I love the way you make me laugh and the way you hold me when I'm scared. I love that you saw something in me that I couldn't see in myself, and you love me anyway. Aaron opened the box, revealing a simple gold band that caught the light from the coffee shop windows. I know I can't give you a traditional proposal. I know we can't get married in a church with all our families watching, but I can give you this promise that I will love you for the rest of my life, that I will be proud to call you my husband, and that I will never again take for granted the gift of being loved by you. Michael was crying now, tears streaming down his face as he looked at this man he'd loved for so long, this man who had been brave enough to rebuild his entire life for the chance to love him openly. So, Aaron said, his own eyes bright with tears, will you marry me? Michael didn't trust his voice, so he just nodded, reaching across the table to cup Aaron's face in his hands. Yes, he whispered. Yes, of course, yes. Aaron's smile was brighter than the sun as he slipped the ring onto Michael's finger, both of them laughing and crying at the same time. The other coffee shop patrons began to notice, a few people clapping and cheering as they realized what they were witnessing. I love you, Michael said, his voice thick with emotion. I love you so much, it scares me sometimes. Don't be scared, Aaron said, leaning across the table to kiss him softly. Be excited, be happy, be ready for the best adventure of our lives. As they sat there in that coffee shop, holding hands across the small table, Michael thought about signs and timing and the strange way life had of bringing people together when they were finally ready to receive the gift of love. He thought about the 3 years he'd spent loving Aaron from a distance, about the patience and hope that had sustained him through the waiting. But mostly he thought about the future, about the wedding they would plan, the home they would build, the life they would create together, about growing old with this man who had been brave enough to question everything he thought he knew about himself for the chance to love authentically. So, Michael said, admiring the way the ring looked on his finger, what's our first official act as an engaged couple? Aaron grinned, that same mischievous smile that had made Michael fall in love with him in the first place. I was thinking we could go home and call our families. Tell them the good news. And after that, we start planning the rest of our lives. Michael leaned across the table to kiss his fiancée, tasting coffee and happiness and the promise of forever on Aaron's lips. Around them, the world continued to turn. People continued to go about their daily routines. But for Michael and Aaron, everything had changed. They had found each other, finally and completely. They had been brave enough to choose love over fear, truth over comfort, authenticity over the easy path. And as they sat there in that coffee shop, planning their future and marveling at the journey that had brought them to this moment, Michael realized that maybe Aaron was right about signs. Maybe some things were meant to be. Maybe some people were meant to find each other, even if it took them a while to get there. Maybe the universe had been conspiring all along to bring them to this exact moment, this perfect convergence of timing and courage and love. Or maybe signs were simpler than that. Maybe a sign was just two people brave enough to see what had always been there, patient enough to wait for the right moment, and strong enough to choose love even when it meant risking everything. Either way, Michael thought as he looked into Aaron's eyes, as he felt the weight of the engagement ring on his finger and the warmth of Aaron's hand in his, he was grateful for whatever force had brought them together. Grateful for the waiting and the hoping and the eventual courage to speak their truth. Grateful for signs, whether they came from the universe or from the simple, miraculous fact of two hearts recognizing their match in each other. 6 months later, they were married in Michael's parents' backyard, surrounded by friends and family who had watched their love story unfold with joy and acceptance. Aaron's parents were there, his mother crying happy tears as she watched her son exchange vows with the man who had helped him discover who he truly was. The ceremony was small and intimate, officiated by Michael's college roommate who had become ordained online specifically for the occasion. Aaron wore a navy blue suit that brought out his eyes, and Michael wore gray, both of them nervous and excited and so deeply in love that everyone present could feel it. When it came time for vows, Aaron spoke first, his voice clear and strong, despite the tears in his eyes. Michael, he said, 3 years ago, you told me that sometimes the most frightening dares lead to the most beautiful discoveries. You were talking about something else then, but those words have stayed with me through this entire journey of figuring out who I am and what I want. He paused, taking a shaky breath. Loving you has been the most frightening and most beautiful discovery of my life. It required me to question everything I thought I knew about myself, to be brave enough to disappoint people, to risk losing the comfortable life I had built for the chance at something real. Michael was crying now, not caring that their wedding guests could see his tears. But every day since I made that choice, Aaron continued, I have been grateful for your patience, for your love, for the way you waited for me to find my way to you. You never pressured me, never made me feel ashamed for taking so long to understand what you had known all along. You just loved me, steadily and completely, until I was ready to love you back the same way. Aaron's voice broke slightly. I promise to spend the rest of my life being worthy of that love. I promise to be brave with you, to be honest with you, to build a life with you that honors both who we were when we found each other and who we're still becoming. I promise to love you through every discovery, every challenge, every joy that comes our way. He slipped the wedding band onto Michael's finger, his hand shaking slightly. I love you, Michael Ruiz. I choose you, today and every day, for the rest of our lives. Michael had to take a moment to compose himself before he could speak. When he did, his voice was thick with emotion but steady. Aaron, he said, someone once told me that love isn't about finding someone perfect, but about finding someone whose imperfections complement your own. I spent 3 years loving you from a distance, thinking that what I felt could never be returned, that I would have to be content with friendship and stolen moments in the hope that maybe, someday, you would see me the way I saw you. He squeezed Aaron's hands. But what I learned through loving you is that the best kind of love isn't about completion or perfection. It's about growth. It's about being brave enough to become the person you're meant to be and finding someone who wants to take that journey with you. Michael's voice grew stronger. You have made me braver, Aaron. You have made me more patient, more understanding, more willing to fight for what matters. You have shown me that love is worth waiting or worth risking everything for, worth rebuilding your entire life for. He slipped Aaron's wedding band onto his finger. I promise to support you as you continue to discover who you are. I promise to be your safe harbor when the world feels overwhelming and your biggest cheerleader when you're ready to take on new challenges. I promise to love you not just for who you are today, but for who you're still becoming. Michael's smile was radiant through his tears. I love you, Aaron Jones. I choose you, today and every day, for all the days we have left. The kiss that followed was soft and sweet and full of promise. Their guests erupted in cheers and applause. But Michael and Aaron were lost in their own world, foreheads pressed together, both of them laughing and crying at the same time. As they walked back down the aisle as husbands, hands intertwined, wedding rings catching the late afternoon sunlight, Michael caught Aaron's eye and saw his own joy reflected there. They had done it. They had taken the leap, the commitment, chosen each other in front of everyone who mattered to them. The reception was a blur of congratulations and dancing and toasts that made them both cry. Michael's sister gave a speech about watching her brother fall in love and being amazed by his patience and devotion. Aaron's best friend from college talked about how different Aaron seemed now, how much happier and more authentic, how obvious it was that he had found his person. But the moment that stuck with Michael the most came late in the evening, when most of their guests had gone home and they were sitting on the porch swing in his parents' backyard, still in their wedding clothes, sharing a piece of cake and marveling at the fact that they were married. Do you remember, Aaron said, his head resting on Michael's shoulder, that night 3 months ago when you asked me about signs? Of course. I've been thinking about that conversation a lot lately, about what it means to believe in signs, about whether things happen for a reason, or if we just make our own meaning. Michael waited, knowing Aaron was working up to something important. I think I figured it out, Aaron said softly. I think signs aren't about fate or destiny or the universe conspiring to bring people together. I think signs are about recognition, about finally being ready to see what was always there. What do you mean? Aaron lifted his head to look at Michael, his eyes serious and full of love. I think you were always my sign, Michael. From the very beginning, from that first day we met in college, you were the sign that pointed toward who I was meant to be. I just wasn't ready to read it yet. Michael felt his chest tighten with emotion. Aaron, you were patient with me while I learned how to read the signs. Aaron continued. You loved me while I was still figuring out how to love myself. You waited for me to become brave enough to follow where the signs were pointing. And where were they pointing? Aaron's smile was soft and certain. Here, to this moment, to you and me, married and happy, and building a life together. To the person I was always meant to become, with the person I was always meant to love. Michael kissed him then, soft and sweet under the stars, tasting cake and champagne and the promise of forever on Aaron's lips. When they broke apart, both of them were smiling. So you believe in signs now? Michael asked. I believe in us, Aaron said, echoing Michael's words from months ago. I believe in love that's patient enough to wait and brave enough to risk everything. I believe in second chances, in new beginnings, in the courage to become who you're meant to be. Is that a yes? Aaron laughed, the sound bright and joyful in the quiet night air. That's a yes. I believe in signs, especially the kind that lead you home. As they sat there on the porch swing, wedding rings catching the moonlight, Michael reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. 3 years of loving Aaron from a distance, months of careful friendship and buried feelings. The terrifying and beautiful moment when Aaron had finally been ready to see what had always been between them. It hadn't been easy. There had been difficult conversations and painful goodbyes, and moments when they both wondered if they were making the right choice. But there had also been moments of pure joy, of recognition, of coming home to themselves and to each other. Now, as they began their life together as husbands, Michael felt a deep sense of gratitude for the path that had led them here. For Aaron's courage in questioning everything he thought he knew about himself. For Christine's grace in letting Aaron go so he could find his truth. For the friends and family who had supported them through the transition. But mostly he felt grateful for love itself. For the way it had sustained him through 3 years of waiting. For the way it had given Aaron the strength to rebuild his life. For the way it continued to grow and deepen between them every day. What are you thinking about? Aaron asked softly, noticing Michael's contemplative mood. Just all of it, Michael said. How we got here, how lucky we are. Lucky? To have found each other, to have been brave enough to take the risk, to have people in our lives who love us enough to support us even when they don't understand. Aaron nodded, his thumb tracing patterns on the back of Michael's hand. I was thinking about that too, about how different things could have been if I hadn't been ready to hear what you were telling me that night. If I had been too scared to question my marriage, my sexuality, my entire understanding of myself. But you were ready, Michael said gently. When the time was right, you were ready. Because of you, Aaron said. Because you loved me enough to wait, and because you believed in me even when I didn't believe in myself. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, both of them processing the magnitude of the day, of the commitment they had just made to each other. The night was warm and quiet, filled with the soft sounds of crickets and the distant hum of traffic from the main road. Michael, Aaron said eventually, his voice soft and serious. Yeah? Thank you. For what? For seeing me before I could see myself. For loving me through the confusion and the fear and the messy process of figuring out who I really am. For being patient with me while I learned how to be brave. Michael turned to face Aaron fully, cupping his husband's face in his hands. Thank you for being worth the wait. Thank you for being brave enough to choose love over comfort, truth over safety. Thank you for building a life with me. They kissed again, slow and tender and full of promise. Around them, the night settled into peaceful quiet, but inside their joined hands, their intertwined lives, there was a warmth and energy that spoke of new beginnings and endless possibilities. As they finally made their way inside, Aaron carrying Michael over the threshold in a gesture that made them both laugh, Michael thought about signs one more time, about the mysterious way life had of bringing people together when they were ready to receive the gift of love, about the patience required to wait for the right moment, the courage required to take the leap when it came. But mostly he thought about the future, about the home they would build together, the challenges they would face, the joys they would share, about growing old with this man who had been brave enough to question everything for the chance to love authentically. And as they settled into bed on their wedding night, Aaron's head on Michael's chest, both of them still marveling at the fact that they were married, Michael realized that maybe the most important sign of all was the simple, miraculous fact of two hearts recognizing their match in each other. The rest, as they say, was just details. Years later, when friends would ask them about their love story, about how they knew they were meant to be together, Michael and Aaron would share the story of signs and recognition, of patience and courage, of love that was strong enough to wait and brave enough to risk everything. They would talk about the night Aaron first admitted his feelings, about the months of careful discovery that followed, about the moment when they both knew that what they had was worth fighting for. They would talk about the challenges they faced and the support they found, about the joy of building a life together and the deep satisfaction of love that had been tested and proven true. But mostly they would talk about the simple, profound truth that some people are meant to find each other, even if it takes them a while to get there. That love, real love, is worth waiting for, worth risking everything for, worth rebuilding your entire understanding of yourself for. And they would end their story the same way it began, with two people sitting together, hands intertwined, grateful for the signs that had led them home to each other, grateful for the courage to follow where love was pointing, grateful for the beautiful, complicated, miraculous journey that had brought them to exactly where they were meant to be, together.